Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
We are rolling too.
Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Terrible happy talks. Are you ready, Tim?
I'm trying to be ready.
Dude,
a little stressed out, but I'll breathe through it.
Just pull yourself together, mate, all right? Okay, and we're rolling. Today's guest is Tim Fijal. Tim is an educator, husband, father, and basically a dude that cares. Tim graduated from the University of British Columbia with a degree in French and Linguistics. He was the director of the Little Mountain Learning Academy in Vancouver, Canada. He had a stint working in Silicon Valley as a corporate trainer. He taught English in Korea and met his wife in the process. He was head of admissions at the globally recognized Green School, and more recently, he is the founder and director of the Kul Kul Connection, a community initiative that endeavours to support and develop English and eco-literacy skills in the local Balinese youth and community of Sibang Kaja and beyond. A dedicated family man, Tim co-founded Tri-Upcycle with his son Ben, a social enterprise which uses upcycled materials to promote conscious consumption and a planet Earth with more trees. Tim's sincere affinity and identification with Asian culture and local law is profoundly obvious, especially through his work with the Kul Kul Connection, the true heart of the Green School. Today, Tim is with me to share his journey, experiences, challenges, and hopes for the future. Tim Fijal, welcome.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, that's
Dude.
a little bit overwhelming, but
Why?
there's a lot of words.
There's a lot of words.
About me.
I know. Does that make you feel weird?
Yep.
Why?
I don't know.
It's impressive. I'm impressed.
Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah. I guess it is a little bit confronting when someone sort of throws your sort of CV in your face. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do understand that. I think I'd feel awkward too. But it's can you describe to us where we're sitting right now?
We're sitting in the Tri-Upcycle office in my home.
Right.
And I didn't think I'd have sweaty palms in the comfort of my own home, but here we are.
Are you telling me you're not media trained? Come on, man.
No, I didn't get that training.
I thought I was
They should give everybody that training at Green School, but I think I skipped that day.
You missed that day. You didn't go to like one of the extra courses or something like that, because I guess I was immediately drawn to you when I first started at the Green School in terms of I guess the program you're running with the Kul Kul Connection. Like I don't want to like dive too deep into it straight away, but I guess I just want to get it out of the way early. Like, can you give everyone a description of what the Kul Kul Connection is?
Okay. Well, the Kul Kul Connection is effectively a bridge. The bridge at Green School is our metaphor, actually. A metaphor for Kul Kul Connection. It bridges the span between the local community and the international community of Green School. So we're a bridge that brings together these two sides that too often are defined as sides and are experienced as sides, at Green School and outside of Green School. So we're looking at ways to identify shared goals and shared values and look at projects and activities and things that we can learn together and do together that make us feel more one.
Like, from a logistical perspective, how are the local community using the resources of the Green School?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is like I see this group of kids sitting under coconut trees every day using the Wi-Fi. Well,
Wi-Fi.
To answer the question initially and quite honestly, yeah. And sometimes that's kind of the way learning goes at Green School. Is it should be a bit incidental, like kids are realize that there's a strong signal there, and it's free. And lo and behold, they're gaming under a coconut tree in front of Green School. And then they go, whoa, what is this Green School place? And maybe the next day they find themselves playing football with some international friends on the field. And then they find out that there's English classes there. And then they find out that, kids at Green School get to do some pretty cool stuff. And they're actually invited to engage and do some of that cool stuff too. Yeah. So they get to have access to a lot of the things at Green School that the international kids have access to. So the spaces, the classroom, the fields, the iHub, to make stuff and to upcycle things. And in fact, they even have access to some of the benefits that the kids at Green School have to travel around and to represent at conferences and to even represent Green School. So yeah, they get in on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, like just going back to your original comment about the students like using the Wi-Fi with their smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have become quite connected to the local community and built some relationships with the local elders and Banja. How do you feel that they're adapting to this generation and their addiction to technology?
Oh,
is there some sadness there?
Yeah, there's definitely some sadness.
And concern?
Yes, absolutely.
In what ways do you think? Like,
well, I mean, I think that's definitely a universal parent experience, right? It doesn't matter where you go in the world right now. Everybody's saying when I was a kid, I wasn't, I was playing with sticks in the gutter. Whether you're from Canada or from Bali, it's like we all connected with nature more. We were outside more. Well, Balinese kids are outside when they're using the Wi-Fi, at least. That's so. But they're lamenting as we are. And I mean, I spend a lot of time with farmers. That's who I enjoy connecting with the most. And I know for them, technology is also an impediment to getting the kids back to receive their heritage and to engage in the rice paddies, in active work. They don't want to do it anymore. It's dirty, So technology and ready access to screens has a lot to do with that.
Wow. Why do you feel like you connect with the local farmers the most, like you just mentioned?
Why?
Yeah, why do you like the farmers the most? What is it that draws you to them?
Well, I think maybe part of it is because my grandparents were farmers on both sides. And I saw the suffering of my grandparent, or at least, well, both of them probably, from living through tough times in the Depression and as farmers in Canada and new immigrants to Canada. And then on the other side, one of my grandparents, my granny, she is really one of my heroes in my life, and so I somehow feel a little bit like I'm emulating her and her simple lifestyle and connection to nature when I'm out there in the paddies. Ironically, she never would have dreamed that her grandkid would be in Bali doing that.
No way.
So, I mean, I think that's part of it. Another part of it is just I appreciate so much about Indonesia that people here are so humble and yet so skilled. They're able to do things with their hands and make things and be stewards of an environment, and they're brilliant. And they have, and the farmers here, they're also, they're living out a tradition that is a beautiful recipe for sustainability. And at Green School, that's what we're looking for. We're looking to make our world sustainable. And right outside the boundaries of our bamboo bubble, if you will, there are people doing these things. They're balancing and sustaining communities and the environment and spirituality and they're doing it all in one fell swoop in the rice paddies. They're farmers, and they don't have that much to say. They're just doing it. They're living it, and they're not super proud of it, but it's such beautiful work. And being with them is really, I don't know, I find it very moving.
Do you find it peaceful?
Yeah, really. We have meetings with them out there sometimes, and they're, I find sometimes in meetings at Green School, and there's a few people sitting around the table, I have a really hard time because I'm pretty, I guess, reserved, and we're a little bit introverted and quiet. And so when I find when I'm in a group of people at Green School and they're internationals, it's really hard for me to get my word in. I find a hard time finding my moment. I'm sitting out there having a meeting with a group of farmers and my Balinese colleagues. We can go like several seconds with just hearing the wind blowing against our skin and sitting out there looking at the rice paddies sort of wistfully. Silence is something that people are quite comfortable with. And that's a real cultural difference, I think, and something that's really beautiful and I find very calming.
Man, do you reckon it's like just the sheer simplicity of it that you're craving?
Yeah, definitely.
I spoke to a Green School parent who is now living in Sibang Kaja, and she left I wouldn't say it's a corporate position. She was an educator at a top level university, professor position, and she just walked away from it all, and she said, I'm actually like trying to detox from Western culture, and it's taking time, and it's actually harmed me.
Yeah.
And it really made me reflect. Like, it just really hit me hard, because this is someone who has achieved a lot and by Western standards, and strived for I don't know exactly what, and maybe she didn't either. And she found that peace and contentment that maybe a lot of us are looking for, because I see a lot of discontent, especially from where I'm from and back home, and I see it in other Westerners. And that's what really draws me to the Balinese people, is that that just dedication to their cultural beliefs and spirituality. It is just so calming.
Yeah.
And going back to what you were saying about the rice paddies, I haven't had a lot of experience with them, but sometimes I'll drive up around Sese, and when the rice paddies are ready to be harvested and they're really tall and the wind's blowing, and you stop on the side of the road and you just hear the wind rustling through the rice paddies. I don't know, man. It's pretty.
It's poetry.
It's a pretty zen thing. Yeah. So you also initiate a rice cycle course. Mm-hmm. Like, can you tell us what that's about?
Yeah, the woman you just described who left her tenured position was in the first chapter of the rice cycle course. She was one of our first students. And
you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. So it's really about, it's Genesis, I guess, is John Hardy's sentence that he uttered in a TED Talk in 2010 that I heard in Vancouver when the rain was pouring against the window on a cold November night, and I watched his TED Talk, and I was just smitten with the vision of Green School. And there was one sentence in that talk that he uttered, which was, our kids at Green School don't learn about the rice cycle, they live the rice cycle. And I mean, that alone, I don't know why, that just resonated so deeply. I picked up the phone and dialed it in. At the time, there was no admissions process, and it was just like, what's your credit card number, sir? And that was it. I told Insuk in the morning that we're going to go to Bali. Is that okay? And, and I mean, what happened is that the kids didn't experience the rice cycle. And, year after year went by, and they might, a couple of times they got to dip their feet in the mud, and I'm sure they talked about it in some classes, but I really felt that experiencing the whole cycle and just adhering to whatever nature had to serve up would just be really instructive, if not meaningful, in some way. I wasn't sure exactly how, but I just wanted them to experience that And then I also wanted to experience it myself. And I guess, after a period of time, I just said to the Kul Kul Connection team, which was about 4 years ago, there was about a half dozen of us, and I said, let's experiencing the rice cycle. Who here has, knows somebody with a plot of land that we could farm for a little while? And Gian, my colleague, said my grandfather does, but he doesn't speak at all. Like, and he's 82, and but he might be willing to let us give it a shot. So that's how it started, and just the Kul Kul Connection team going out there. We invited others to join us, internationals. A couple came along for once or twice, but they didn't experience the whole cycle, but we did, and I was deeply moved by it, deeply moved by being with a Zen master, really, Gian's grandfather, in his place, ripped, just this...
And 82 still working in the rice paddy?
Every day he walks out there 1.5 kilometers from his house to the rice paddy, sometimes carrying huge bags of fertilizer or, on his head. Doesn't get on a bicycle or a motorbike ever, but he's unbelievable. He's just a beautiful human being, and he's out there every day in his paddy. When being with somebody like that in his element that he's been in for, the last 8 decades, his parent, his father, his grandfather, that's his land. This is his field of practice, and it's really a moving thing to be with somebody in that space. And
when you're watching him do his daily work, does it become very obvious that for him it's more than just about growing food for the family and the community? Yeah. It's really a very spiritual practice.
Absolutely, it's a way of life. He doesn't really need words.
Kind of like maybe if he stopped, he'd probably die.
Yeah. So actually he got sick and went to the hospital and spent some time there, and then went back home, and he was staying home for, I guess, a week or two because he was sick, and Gian said that he was driving her grandmother nuts, and that he was getting into trouble and definitely not happy. Yeah. And it was actually at that time that Gian suggested, because there was a green school parent from the Netherlands who do you remember the photo exhibition that was around the field of the rice warriors
the
of Bali?
Portraits?
Yeah.
The black and white portraits?
Yeah.
That was so cool.
Really cool. And a Dutch parent had just arrived and saw these portraits, and she came from a media company in the Netherlands, and she said, my company would like to support old people in Indonesia, but we don't want to give to an organization. We just want to give directly to the old people. What can we do? Can we fix their eyes? It looks like they got cataracts. Can we get their teeth? It's like, no, these, like the rice warriors of Bali, the last generation of rice farmers, they don't need better eyes or teeth. We don't need that. I don't know what you could do to help, but maybe we can talk to Gian and see, how she sees this. She's Balinese, I'm not, and Gian said, well, if you wanted to improve the way of life for farmers, you could build them a kubu. Because Gian's grandfather, she told the story about him being at home and getting in trouble. If he had a more comfortable place to hang out in the rice paddies, he could be in his place and he'd just be happy, and that would elevate his quality of life so much. And we actually, the first rice cycle course, we called it the Kubu course, because our intention was, because I didn't have any success for a couple of years trying to entice international members of our community to go out there and experience the whole rice cycle. We invited them this time, but we said, if you're going to join up for the course, it's going to have to be from the beginning to the end, from seed to table, and you're going to have to pay for it. And it'll be 2 million, roughly 200 Canadian dollars, Oz dollars. And we're going to use that money to build a kubu for Gian's grandfather. And just like that, Kul Kul Connection was having a hard time getting traction with the international community, but suddenly we had 14 signups, and that was how the course started last September.
Amazing. Wow. And so that was last September, and so you're now into
We're into chapter 3.
Okay.
So,
okay.
And by chapters, I mean, it's kind of like a book unfolding. We don't have any clear strategy or plan. We're just seeing where it takes us. But what was interesting in chapter 1 is that we realized that it couldn't be about Guillen's grandfather. Guillen was doing research for a master's degree in agricultural science, environmental science, with a focus on agriculture and rice cultivation. And she had connected with a couple of farmers in a nearby nearby irrigation area called Subak Umalambing. And when we got out there every week working with these farmers, and they offered their fields, they prepared coconuts and Balinese cakes for us, and shared their expertise and expected nothing, and it was really so moving. When we brought up the issue of money, they were more concerned with just like, it's so amazing that international people are wanting to spend time and come out here and be in our place. And we reached the conclusion that we would work every time we'd go out there. We'd work for about an hour and a half, 2 hours in the field, and then we'd sit in a circle and share. The internationals would have an opportunity to ask their questions to the farmers, and the farmers could express how they were feeling about the situation. It's not always easy to extract stuff from the farmers. They're pretty quiet. But we consistently asked them, what are your challenges out here as farmers? And they told us very openly, we are very concerned about the quality of the soil. Since the Green Revolution in the 70s, since we were younger, when that came and Monsanto had their way and we started spraying these fields, the quality of the soil has just gradually gotten worse and worse, and the biodiversity is plummeting.
Well, let's just clarify that. So spraying in the fields with pesticides, correct?
Yeah. In
order to, I guess, obtain bigger yields and make more money, correct?
Right. Yeah.
But that was actually initiated by local people?
No.
So how did that infiltrate their practices is what I want to know.
Well, I mean...
Maybe could you explain the Green Revolution?
It happened. It was really initiated by the likes of Monsanto and Dow, the same guys that poured napalm and Agent Orange all over the hills of Vietnam.
Is that because Monsanto was purchasing rice from Bali?
No, it was because they had chemicals to sell and they wanted to make were
promoting them to the local farmers. And
not just in Bali, but I mean, it was all across the developing world in India and Southeast Asia. They came in with an agenda to sell a lot of chemicals and get farmers hooked on them, basically, with the promise that this was the Green Revolution. This is how we are going to feed the world, that your crops will get so much larger and you'll be wealthy and everybody will have food to eat. So it was a lie.
So that's like propaganda, really, wasn't it? It's just sold to them.
Yeah.
So do you think they've realised this now and they're trying to correct those errors?
Well, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this gets a little bit dicey, but, the world over, governments and corporations are in cahoots, and it's hard to retract yourself from the situation where there are subsidies now for the farmers that keep them on chemicals and make it very difficult for them to transition off, because the farmers are really just scraping to get by. They make a couple $100 a month generally on their small,
Well, can you tell me what does a farmer get for a kilo of rice that they harvest? What's their wholesale rate?
In a good situation, it depends on if there's a middleman or not. But a farmer would make around 30 kilos per 100 square meters. For one cycle. What that all comes out to, once they sell their rice for, if they're lucky and there's no middleman, about 10,000 rupiah, so around $1 a kilo.
Uh-huh.
If it's milled, it could be a lot less than that if not. But roughly, they're looking at maybe $200 or $300 a month, factoring in not being paid for their labor, which is obviously very heavy, or any sort of unforeseen expenses that they'll incur throughout the year. So yeah.
So I guess that must be very hard for them to entice young people to get involved.
Exactly.
And perpetuate it.
Yeah. And, people wonder why the rice paddies of Bali are disappearing. And, you look at a farmer who can get roughly either 60 cents per ara in return for farming rice, or, 20 times that much for just turning it over to put a villa on top of it. It's like pretty hard to, when somebody's waving the money under your nose to say no to, especially when your grandkids aren't picking up the trade.
Yeah. And I guess too, like the grandkids are now, they're more exposed to the Western world through globalization and the access to technology and information.
Yeah.
So they're actually like, so an 18-year-old or a 17, 16-year-old Balinese young person can now see what and how a 16 or 18-year-old Westerner lives and what they have and what they're doing. So they're kind of like maybe drawing more comparisons and wanting to emulate that lifestyle more. Yeah.
Possibly. I'm not sure about that entirely, though. Like, I wondered that too. But, sitting here in this house, I think the average Balinese person would far rather be in a compound where their extended family is all around and there's interactions and, than having a nice villa with a swimming pool is not necessarily something that they aspire to.
You don't think so?
I'm not sure. I don't know if I can confidently say that, but just witnessing the togetherness of family and the happiness they derive from that, like how happy they are just going to ceremonies that, and I equate that to like, being forced to go to mass or something as a kid. It's like, I don't want to go do this. Like, I remember when I first came here, I'd ask Balinese people, you guys really want to go to these ceremonies? Like, isn't it boring? It's like, no, it's like the best.
Yeah.
I love it.
I've
we hang
noticed.
out with the dudes all day and we're just like, they're happy. They love going to ceremonies.
Yeah. And I do notice the young people do it. They're proud of it and they do enjoy it.
Yeah, there is a cultural pride. I don't think is the right word, but it resonates with them. They love it. It's who they are, and they live it. Yeah,
they live it.
Yeah.
I mean, every Thursday they always wear in ceremony outfit, and the full moon ceremonies every month. I mean, where I'm from, we don't have those kind of traditions and cultures. It's really, that's been the biggest open. And like, the Hindu prayers every morning, like, I mean, I use that as my alarm clock. Mm-hmm. Although I don't. My 1.5-year-old is my alarm clock at 5 a.m, but we won't talk about that. So listen, man, like, where'd you grow up? So let's talk about your childhood. So you grew up in Canada.
Yeah.
In BC, British Columbia?
I went to university in British Columbia. So I spent some of my adult life there. But yeah, I grew up in Calgary, Canada.
In Calgary?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it's really cold there.
Yeah, really darn cold.
Colder than Toronto?
Canada, cold. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's colder than... I mean, we used to determine how cold it was by spitting on the fence before playing hockey after school. And if your spit would freeze before it would hit the rink, then you'd know you probably have, 10 minutes before your nose is turning black from frostbite.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah, it would be like minus 40 some days.
Yeah, I was in Toronto, actually the outskirts of Toronto years ago in winter. And I mean, I'm from Australia, the East Coast. I mean, the coldest days we get is like 10 degrees.
Yeah, forget about it.
And I just couldn't get over it. They're like, yeah, we can't go out today. There's going to be a wind chill factor of minus 40 because the wind's up. And I was just like... This is crazy, man. Yeah. That was an eye-opener. And so, yeah, you grew up in Calgary. Like, what was your childhood like growing up? What were some of the things you're into?
I love skiing and, building snow forts and hiking, and I was outside a lot when I think about it. Yeah.
And did you say your grandparents were farmers?
They were, yeah.
What were they farming specifically?
They were both market gardeners on the Red River in Manitoba. During the Depression and at that time. So farming a lot of vegetables, I guess.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
And then, like, you went to school there through your elementary and high school years?
I went to school
In
in Calgary, yeah.
And like, what kind of student were you? Come on, Tim.
Okay. Okay. I was a very good little boy.
Were you?
I was.
Why?
I don't know. Like I towed the line. I just like I
even
didn't
through high school.
Yeah, like too much.
Academic.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good grades.
Very good grades until I hit university. Then it all fell apart.
What happened at uni?
I think I just got sick of being like, of towing the line and jumping through the hoops. And it's like, when do I get to do something that feels like something I really want to learn about? And it never really happened until I got out of the education system.
Did you feel like you needed to get good grades to validate your self-worth?
That's presumptuous.
Well, I'm sorry. Like, the reason I say that sounds deep, but like, I often hear a lot of people like they sort of identify with the fact that like a lot of people who got good grades was like, well, that's how I valued myself I was a good student, and that's how everyone's seen me. I was the good student, and that was what I was known for.
Yeah.
Because I don't hear anything in between. I often hear I was a really good student, or oh man, I was just a nightmare at school, and I gave my teachers heaps of shit, and
Yeah. No.
So
I was the non-nightmare at school.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
And so, did you? Oh, go. Okay.
I didn't hit my rebellious stride until I was probably in my 40s.
I don't think you're rebellious stride. Can we call that a midlife crisis?
I don't know. Maybe it was. I didn't experience it that.
Maybe that's what I'm going through. Maybe
could be.
I think I am.
I've been worried about you.
Thank you. At least someone cares. Okay, so
I'm a dude that cares.
You are a dude that cares. I can tell. I'm not even being facetious. Like, that's why I want you on the podcast. I can tell you're a dude that cares. Yeah.
Thanks.
Now,
man.
so did you transition straight? Did you transition straight from high school to university? And I'm always curious to ask people this, and I'll tell you why when you answer.
I did not.
Right.
What'd
you do?
I actually found an excuse to not graduate with my peers when I was in high school.
Why?
Because this is so lame. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm admitting. I wanted to play volleyball for one more year.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you made yourself repeat a year.
I made myself repeat a year. I had 99 credits at the end of my grade 12 year, and I came back to be the phys ed teacher's aide. And I think I took typing as well in my last semester, and they foolishly let me play volleyball for another year, and our team went to the provincials and won, and it's just sort of like because they had a bunch of old guys like me playing.
Old guys?
Yeah, it was
like a year older.
Yeah.
Don't joke. I actually was wanting because I'm a PE teacher, and I've seen that the students that were maybe held back a year, they're always getting better grades in PE and sport and representing because they're just slightly older. So I used to say to my wife, like, we're holding our kids back. They're not starting school till they're 6, so for that reason, dude.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I did that. I mean, I didn't have to, but I was afraid of what to do next after high school as well.
Scary.
So it was scary. And I ended up working for a year.
Just odd jobs, or?
I built golf clubs.
What? That's so
I assembled
random.
golf clubs.
At a factory?
Not really. Yeah, at a factory, and I golfed incessantly at that age. I worked at a golf course too.
Cool. Were you a golf pro?
No, I was a caddy for the pro.
Were you?
Yeah.
Do I know anyone I know?
No, but
a local pro.
I caddied in a foursome with Arnold Palmer once.
No way.
Yeah.
What was he like?
Yeah, pretty low key guy.
Good at golf?
Yeah. Yeah. He was. He was about 82 years old at that stage, but yeah, he was still pretty good. Yeah.
I've heard that's a spiritual practice.
Yeah. I thought it was a pretty elitist practice after a while, and I kind of had my fill of it.
Now, knowing what you know and your connection to the land, how do you feel about golf courses?
Not so much. Don't get me started about that.
Why?
Exactly. I mean, that's one of the reasons. I remember my mom drawing that to my attention. You know, there's Roundup all over that grass.
Yeah.
And I felt pretty gross about that. My mom's my hero too.
Yeah.
I felt dirty.
You did?
Yeah. Okay, Mom, I'm done with golf.
You know what I used to do? Because I lived near a beautiful golf course where I grew up in this town called Nowra on the southeast coast of Australia. And for pocket money, we used to go down to the golf course and rummage through like the bush around the fairways and the actual greens, because a lot of them would overshoot it, and find golf balls and then sell them back to the pro shop.
I used to do the very same thing, skinny dipping in the water hazards by moonlight. Yes.
Yeah, and like there was like a swamp and like so who was brave enough to go into like the dirtiest one, but usually that's where you'd get the best balls, and they were clean because they've been wet, you know, like they
Nothing like clean balls. You said it.
I can't believe you went there. I can't believe, like, Tim.
You can edit.
Who are you? Who is Tim Fijal? You know, you were talking about venereal diseases earlier too before this. That's just weird, man. What was I saying? Yeah. So and that was my experience with golf courses, because I could never afford to play golf.
Yeah, neither could I. That's why I worked for the golf course.
That was your in.
Yeah, I actually scrubbed clubs for 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so once you did that for, like you said, you didn't go straight to university, even though you were quite academic as a teenage high school student. Mm-hmm. So you did that for a while. And then at what stage did you say, okay, I want to extend my education?
Yeah, it was probably a couple months into assembling and scrubbing golf clubs. It's like, it's enough of this. And I was particularly strong at math in high school, and I figured I'll do what I can do. I'll go to university and just study math. Yeah. And so I did that at first, and then realized that was pretty miserable to do that.
Well, what was the end game of studying maths at university? Like become a maths teacher? Become
an actuarial scientist.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I thought I was going to be.
Actuarial?
I don't know. They work for insurance companies. And figure out, play with numbers all day.
Yeah. Okay, so that'd be quite a secure job. You know?
I guess that's how I was thinking when I was 19 years old. Yeah. Man, have I ever swung the pendulum to the other extreme. Yes.
You feel like a completely different person to the 19-year-old Tim Fijal?
Absolutely.
I'm serious with this question. It's like, can you describe why? I mean, is it your philosophies on life? Is it your morals? Is it your values? Is it what you regard as important? What has changed? Like, yeah.
I think there's some morals and values that have stayed constant if I reflect back on it. But I think maybe what's changed is the veil of fear being slowly lifted from my eyes, maybe.
Fear of what?
Fear of not being able to provide for yourself, or failure, or not finding a way to fit into society in a meaningful and productive way. Any number of things, and that fear clouds you from actually pursuing the things that you actually give a shit about, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can identify with that. For me, the fear comes from, like, it tends to go back to financial security. Yeah. I'm like, oh, well, you know, especially when you have children. I'm like, well, I don't know, I could go and pursue a passion, but I don't know if that's going to feed my kids. Yeah. Or I, could do something that I don't, like it's a tricky one. I mean, I think most people have that conundrum, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I think we're getting to be a pretty entitled lot that we can talk about passions too. It's become such a cliche thing. What's your passion? Identify your passion. It's like, did our grandparents get to think about passions? Yeah. Or our parents, for that matter? Yeah. So there was a pragmatic stage, and then we were I think the first generation that could be not so pragmatic and think about what we love to do and that sort of thing. So I don't know how that works exactly, but
so you think pursuing a passion is a rich person's luxury?
Well, maybe it is a privilege, isn't it? There's not. If you think about when you think about the whole world, which we don't usually count ourselves members of the whole world.
Yeah.
You know, we forget that there's 90+% of human beings on planet Earth that are just trying to figure out how to get clean drinking water and get food on the table at the end of the day. You know,
they're not really thinking about starting a podcast. That's not
well, yeah, or
it's
pursuing
true,
their passion, you know, and maybe they still do pursue their passion in some way or shape or form, you know, by interactions they have in their community or with their family or things that they love to do in their free time. But yeah, it's funny how we've sort of assumed that we can make a career out of our passions. Yeah. I don't know.
I've never thought of it like that because I'm often conflicted, like, am I really doing what I love? And I mean, I'm a teacher and I do, like, when I first got into it, I was like, well, it's perfect because I can I've always been drawn to wanting to help people in some way. And I felt like education and being a teacher was such a great fit because I could, you know, earn a living, which was quite a reasonable, sufficient, you know, but, and then also maybe have a bit of an influence on our future generations and society, you know. So that it was always a really good marriage, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you went to university and graduated eventually with a degree in French and Linguistics.
Yeah.
Why French and Linguistics? From being maths.
I dropped out after a year and a half of math.
Too mundane.
Did what every Calgarian does when they're disillusioned, not sure what to do with their life. They go west, young man. And so I went west to the coast and started a new life as a valet, parking fancy cars at a nice restaurant in Vancouver. I think the same year that Ferris Bueller's Day Off came out. Do you remember that one?
Come on, man.
Anyway.
I'm not that young. You just made me feel young. Dude, Ferris Bueller's that's my jam, dude.
Yeah. You remember
I'm 42. I get it.
The airtime with the Ferrari.
Oh, man. Yeah. It's the best movie ever. And also, like, the thing I loved about that movie, because I was a teenager when it came out, was that he was just hanging out with such a hot chick all day. The whole movie, I'm like, when's he going to hook up with her? Yeah.
Exactly.
I reckon so many kids must have, like, skipped school around that era.
Or picked up valet parking as a part-time job.
So is that what inspired you?
I think partly, yes. And I did that and realized that while I was doing that, I realized I can't do this forever. And my brother, bless his heart, he came out to visit me, and I was also working at a ski hill selling tickets there. And we were skiing one day, and he asked me what I wanted to do with my life, and I said, I don't know, but I just have this feeling like I need to travel. I've never been outside of Canada, and I was like, I guess 21 years old, and he had never had that experience, and he dropped $2,000 check on me and said, just live your dream, bro.
That's
and
right.
it was unbelievable, and so I bought myself a bicycle for a few $100, and I put it in a box, and I shipped it off to London. And I went there and I worked in London at the Gap under the table. They were paying me for
Gap
a few
clothing
months.
store.
Yes, folding T-shirts for
Which suburb of London?
I was on Regent Street.
In what's that Piccadilly Circus area? Or
yeah, it's close.
The main area.
Close to there. Yeah.
Yep.
And I saved up some cash there, just a little bit, enough to fly to Athens and rode the bicycle back with my buddy to London. And that was just exposure to languages and cultures for the first time in my life. And I was just blown away. It's like, why would I study math? So that's when I got non-pragmatic and just thought, I guess I'll go back to university and study languages. So I did, without any real sense of what I would do with them.
Okay. Like, not like, I'm going to be a translator.
No.
Okay, cool. But just more because you were interested, because that would lead into learning about another culture indirectly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool.
And I wanted to keep traveling after that, and I thought learning languages would be a ticket for that.
Yeah, open the world up a little bit. That's amazing. Yeah, I lived in London for a stint myself, actually. My father was born in a place called Malta.
Oh, wow.
which at the time was part of the EU, and I got a Maltese passport, and so I was able to actually like live in London and legitimately and work, and didn't, like it was amazing. Like, and just to identify and relate to your story, I actually left high school feeling really dumb. Like I didn't get good grades. I had the best social life ever. I
had no social life, so.
And but I left school just feeling like I was completely dumb. Like, and the teachers actually made me feel that way. My grades were terrible at the end, and the thought of going to university was just so like, well, that's not me. And I remember my careers advisor said to me, what do you want to do when you leave school? And I said, I want to go to university. And she just went, no, maybe you should maybe get a trade. I think you're over a trade. And I remember going, like, really, I walked out of her office just feeling so like, well, I'm just not smart,
Jeez.
And so then I didn't go, and then I from the age of like 18 to 24, I worked odd jobs. I was a waiter, coffee maker. I worked as a labourer on construction sites, factory work, paying my own way, and I was also really into skateboarding, and I was kind of like trying to live the skate dream, like working part-time jobs, and I was like, I'm going to be a pro skateboarder one day, and I did. I sort of was like, I'm going to chase that dream. It had never happened, but I often reflect on that period, because then I actually went to university when I was 24, but it took me that long to build up the confidence to go to even just like, okay, I think I could do it if I really try. Like that's how much my self-esteem was crushed from leaving high school.
Yeah.
And that's why it's such you were talking about it before, and I was talking about it with your wife earlier. I just feel like that last year or two of high school is the most delicate time. Yeah. Not so much academically, but confidence-wise. Yeah, yeah. And just having to build up that young person. Because, I didn't really have a very stable home life in that time for various reasons. So I didn't have people at home trying to encourage me either. It was just like, you got to get a job and you got to start paying me board. Like, like it was like, so that's why, like, I really love that you didn't want to go straight away, and you did get into the real world and be a valet and all those kind of things. And I look back on those times and I do not regret that time at all. In fact, it laid the strongest foundation for the rest of my life that I've ever had. It gave me this fire that I'm not saying everyone doesn't have the fire, but it just gave me, I don't know, it built a lot of resilience, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. So
that's a real trick as a parent, is how do you allow your kids to get that fire and have that, earn that resilience. And it just comes with suffering, really. There's just no two ways about it. We've just got to.
I mean, your wife said it before. That. She said it in a nice way, but I agree with her. Like, unfortunately, some of the best lessons come from suffering. Yeah, and it is necessary, and it's going to happen. I think suffering, in my opinion, will happen to anyone, regardless of your socioeconomic status. Yeah. Regardless of the privilege or regardless of the lack of privilege, there'll be degrees of suffering in your life. And I think, maybe.
Yeah, having said that, it feels like we work so hard to ensure our kids don't suffer these days, and we're just so involved, You reflect on how, you were allowed to suffer and you were given the space to suffer as a kid. And I know, as much as my parents, I had fantastic relationship with them, but there was a space, you did have space to fail. I feel that I don't feel like my kids have yet been given that space somehow. They're 20, almost 22 and 17.
But some may say that then you've succeeded as a parent. Yeah. Well, yeah. Because I know that's, at the moment, I look at my 4-year-old and I never wanted to suffer.
Of course, it goes against the grain. Yeah. But there was, I guess, more of a culture of letting your kids play outside and we'll see you at dinner or whatever. And, I think we had a lot more independence in our generation. In my generation, I'm older than you are.
Excuse me?
I said our generation, but I'm older than you are, so I didn't want to offend any delicate sensibilities there. So.
Thank you. I'm a little bit offended, just a little bit. Just a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. How do you feel like raising a family in Bali? Because, I mean, how long have you been here now? 10 years?
Going on 9 years.
9 years. I mean, that's significant for your son.
Yeah.
He's the only one of your children that's grown up here, or?
JJ, the older one, was here for 5 years as well.
How do you feel like, choosing to bring them up here has shaped their personality?
Well, they're global citizens. That I guess not having a clear identity is going to be something that they'll live with all their lives. Mom is Korean and dad is Canadian, and they were brought up in between Canada, the States for a while, and Bali, which is really unique. And this is what they refer to as home now. So that's a bit confusing how that impacted their personalities. Not sure, yet to be seen. But I mean, I have to admit, I come from a pretty staunchly middle class background, and coming here, and there's some contradictions to the way we live and the values we espouse. And I often feel a little concern about that, and having beds made and bathrooms cleaned and things like that I grew up doing, and I think was part of building character. A lot of the kids here don't get exposure to that, and they get exposure to a lot of cool stuff, but some of the most fundamental stuff I worry about.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a contradiction that I struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially having a little baby and a nanny who is, because I work full time, she spends more time with my child than I do.
Right.
And that's hard for me. And I come home and my bed's made.
Yeah.
I'm actually concerned that I'm not going to be able to reintegrate when I get back home, because it's something when it's a different culture. Even if you had the means for that back home, most people don't actually choose to do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's interesting. And you used the word before, espoused. That's a rad word, man.
Is it?
I've never really.
I have to look it up.
What does it mean? What does it mean? I like it. I'll be honest. I don't think I've heard it before. It's a great word. It sounds good. And I actually understood because you used it in a context that I understood. I'm going to look it up. I'm Googling it.
I think we're talking. I'll just stand by while you Google.
Is it like e-spouse? Like your spouse, but it's an electronic spouse?
That's exactly what it is. That's what I meant to say.
I'm serious. I'm not being sarcastic. It's a rad word. You taught me a new word. If nothing else comes out of this episode, I learned a
new word.
New word.
Good,
dude. I'm impressed. So listen, you mentioned that your wife is Korean.
Yeah.
And that you actually went to Korea to teach English.
Yeah.
What originally attracted you to Asian culture?
Nothing. To be perfectly honest, I went to UBC, which was not very kindly referred to as the University of a Billion Chinese, sometimes not even that politely. And you can edit this, right, if you need to.
I pride myself on not editing.
All right.
Because it takes away from the authenticity.
I'm being honest,
Thank you.
I was taking French and Linguistics classes, and I was in class mostly with Asian women. There were very few guys in the courses that I was taking, and I didn't really think much of it. I just thought they have their thing and I do my thing, and I didn't have a lot of close friends. They seemed kind enough, but I wasn't all that interested.
Yeah.
But what I did realize after I graduated was that I had $40,000 worth of debt, and Starbucks wasn't even hiring. So what am I going to do? So it's like people were going to Japan or Korea at the time to make big money learning teaching English. So to me, that felt like a viable way to pay the debt off and continue to travel, even though I had no prior interest in Asia really and traveling there or ever going there. But okay, I'll just suck it up and go to Asia and pay my debts and work really hard for a year or two. And I landed on May 18th, 1995, which was exactly 15 years after the Gwangju uprising. So I don't know if listeners are going to know that event, but it was a student uprising in a city called Gwangju in South Korea. And the military opened fire on a peaceful demonstration, and I still don't know how many people perished in that event. So 15 years later, I land. This is my first time in Asia, and I go from the airport to my language school where I'm going to teach. And we pull up, and there are soldiers in the street, clad in black, and they're all like between 18 and 22 years old, and carrying big batons and just looking super intimidating. And there's a whole street full of similarly aged students sitting cross-legged on the street with toothpaste under their eyes, and cannons start to go off, and off goes the tear gas. And my first day in Asia, I'm tear gassed. I
didn't know that toothpaste under the eyes helped prevent, to help combat that. Oh, wow. See, these little details.
Yeah, there you go. Now you know for next time.
You got tear gassed.
Yeah, and I was just
was it gnarly?
It was super gnarly, but what was even more gnarly is I was moved to the core by these young people who gave a crap. It's like Canada's all about apathy. Where I come from, nobody had any reason to demonstrate against anything, and here people were putting, it felt like, their lives on the line with a great deal of courage to stand up for what they believed in. And I on that day, I really fell in love with Asia, and I never really looked back. I saw traditional markets and people eating their food that was really their food, and, people really celebrating their culture. And it was just all new to me. And it totally took me by surprise.
See, like, I think I've always connected with Canadians because they're part of the Commonwealth, and I think our countries are very, similar political history and culture. And you just mentioned then, their food was really theirs. I go to Australia, like, what's our food?
Yeah.
What's a Canadian dish? Poutine.
Yeah.
Is that
it's not even a Canadian dish. It's a Quebecois dish, right?
It's French.
Yeah, I can't claim that as my dish in the other side of Canada. But yeah, what is it? Donuts? I'm not sure.
Yeah. That's exactly right. So, yeah, wow, man. That's so... I've actually never heard of that about the riots in Korea.
Yeah, there was a recent movie that came up.
I feel really ignorant for not knowing that, because it sounds heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have been.
Kind of just conjured some thoughts about what's going on in Hong Kong at the moment.
Yeah.
Apparently that's really escalating with the Chinese military there.
Yeah.
Or is it the Chinese military that are actually coming in, or is it the Hong Kong military that are run by the Chinese? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the futility of those situations, it's terrible,
Yeah.
There's a guy who maths teacher, just started working at the Green School. He's been living in Hong Kong, and he's really connected to the culture there and the people, and loves it. And he said his heart is breaking,
Yeah.
And part of the reason to move here was to get out of it, because it's
tragic.
But like we come from these really, is the word homogenized cultures?
Yeah, definitely.
Where it's very safe and very secure, and it's just, I don't know how I would cope living in that sort of political climate, because it's just so foreign, and it does make me feel quite lucky, and fills me with gratitude.
Yeah,
I do have that safety and security, because a place I can just go back to whenever I want. So, but yeah, man, wow. Look, the Kul. I want to go back to the Kul Kul Connection a little bit.
Sure.
Because do you feel like in your life, would you call it the pinnacle of would you regard it as the pinnacle of your life's work?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I guess, it's the first time that I found an opportunity to stand for something, and I could actually do more than just say that sucks, or this shouldn't be that way, or it's like something occurred, it happened, it became real, it manifested into one thing that led to the next, and now it's like around 7 years later, and we have a team of 15 people that are working on it. It's a job that became a job.
And it's kind of like it's a school within a school.
It really is, yeah.
Like, can you just elaborate on it a little bit? Because I just want it to be really clear to people who aren't familiar with it. So, like, how many local students are actually part of the Kul Kul Connection?
We have 473 enrolled right now.
And then they come and use the school after hours.
Yeah.
So when the school closes at 3:15, they come in and start school.
Yep.
Until...
Well, they come once or twice a week from 4 to 5. So when the green school kids, the international kids, sort of head home at the end of the day, the gates open, and anybody who sticks around past 4 o'clock or so will see a whole lot of Balinese parents hanging outside in their bikes ready to pick up their kids at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
So they come once or twice a week. They come there in response to, well, it started with me walking around with Oren Hardy, the son of the founder, John Hardy. Oren and I were talking a few months after I arrived at Green School in 2011, and I had just getting to know Oren, and I said, man, the way your dad described this place is like not really how I'm experiencing it. Like, I'm really concerned, like, about how everything seems to be taken care of here. Like, with these people who I thought were going to be our teachers are more like our servants and stuff. Like, why aren't the kids in the gardens more? And why aren't we like getting out and like this experiencing this Wallace learning environment and hanging out with local people or sharing their local wisdom with us and stuff like that?
Did he feel the same way?
He said, yeah, man, this is what Western people do when they come to Bali. And he said, have you ever considered getting outside this? Like, and I said, oops, yeah, no, I sort of forgot to walk around the hood and talk to people. So I guess it feels a little scary, right? Like, you're in there in a place where you can get your cafe latte and you have your yoga class and your raw food. It's like everything I could possibly want is here to be comfortable and content as an expat or new immigrant in Bali. So there's little incentive to get outside, and there's almost a fear factor because maybe you don't speak the language, or maybe you think it's just kind of like, whatever.
Too hard.
Yeah, maybe. And so Oren suggested, why don't we just walk around and I'll introduce you to a few people, because he grew up in Bali and he knew how it all worked and who does what. And we met with some heads of things like schools and subaks and temples and villages, and we met with just some average people like warung owners and people that were hanging out. And I continually did this for like about 6 months. I started teaching English to a few of them. And we continually asked people, what could we do to make Green School relevant, meaningful, valuable to the local community? Like,
keep going.
Yeah. So, and consistently their response was, you can teach our kids English.
Gotcha.
So it's not like necessarily what I wanted to do, but that's what they wanted. That's what they asked for. So we started with that. Overnight we had my Bahasa Indonesia teacher at the time, Pak Soma, stepped up and said he would teach kids, and overnight we had like 100 kids. He enrolled them single-handedly. He taught them single-handedly. And I'd come by the school at night at 8 o'clock. I could hear laughter in the darkness, and Soma just having a great time with these kids, and it was awesome. And I think it was year 3 that Emma came around. She was my intern as the head of admissions, and I was doing Kul Kul Connection by that point, and for 2.5 years, but just as a labor of love in my free time. And Emma was supposed to be supporting me as the head of admissions as an intern, and I said, there's something cooler to work on than filing these papers. Do you want to help with Kul Kul Connection? And she got into teaching, and she had the concept of doing trash for class. There was, all this concern about waste management and in the local vicinity, and why is there plastic everywhere and everything. So, and Kambali started to happen at that time, our waste management center at Green School. And Emma said, why don't we have them pay with trash? So the kids, 473 of them now, pay with 10 kilograms a year of recyclable trash.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's their tuition fee.
Yeah.
They've got to bring 10 kilos to Kambali.
Yeah.
No way, Tim. That's so rad.
It is rad.
It's so project-based. And it just ticks all those 21st century learning skills. Like, my teacher friends back home will listen to this. Hopefully they listen to it. And just go like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's just real. It's real. It's significant. It's sustainable. Like, I don't know. Like, and it's not even about ticking boxes. It's just about giving an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, man. Like, okay. So, and then it started to build momentum. At what stage were you then given the opportunity to make it a full-time position for you?
Yeah.
Like, when did that happen?
When was that?
Or how did that happen? Did you have to campaign for it?
I didn't.
Did you have support? I mean, surely you would have been supported in that.
Yeah, I mean, that is support. The fact that Green School reached a point where they said, this is actually a thing, Kul Kul Connection, and why don't you be the director of it? So, and I was funded. Basically my package for being the head of admissions was just transferred over to being the director of Kul Kul Connection. And then we built our team, and now we have a lot of people working with us, and it's become really, I think, embedded in the culture of Green School, which is a pretty wonderful thing.
In my opinion, it's so embedded.
Yeah.
And I think it really taps into that idea that many parents, families, teachers have when they first arrive.
Yeah.
Of that, community-based, community building, being in the gardens, that wall-less real learning experience.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the epitome of it, and that's my opinion. It really exemplifies the vision that was probably originally had.
Yeah, I think we're very privileged in our position. We're now part of faculty, and we've got it good. When I think about, I think it's easier for us to realize that vision than it is for a lot of the faculty of Green School that are really being held accountable by parents and expectations of just the world, that we're sort of like, we want to be progressive in education, but we're sort of hedging our bets. We're not willing to go quite that far yet, right? It's like, still got to make sure they're ready to get into university and ready to transition back to their regular schools back wherever and all that stuff. And I think with Kul Kul Connection, we don't have to worry so much about learning objectives and outcomes. It's an extracurricular program, and we can just do real learning and make it enjoyable and impactful and embedded in the community. And there's not that much consequences. Nobody is really saying, why didn't you,
Is it met with it's met with grace from the community because they're grateful for the opportunity? Like that. Yeah.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, I get quite a few high fives coming out when it feels so good, to meet those parents and like to feel their sincere gratitude. That feels it's so gratifying to feel like I'm on the right track.
Dude, you'd be super well known in Sibang Kaja.
Yeah, not bad. But I'm not going to say that 100%. There are parents who are dubious about it as well. Like, I don't,
local parents,
definitely, yeah.
Is that because they're scared of their children being influenced by Western standards and culture?
Rightfully so. Yeah. And I mean, I think not the majority of them, but in terms of parents there are a lot of parents who might be drawn to have their kids enrolled at Green School, but others who are, cautious as well about what influences or what agendas we might have. It's not straightforward.
Are you as passionate about it now as you were when you first started?
Yeah, even more so.
Why?
Because I can see the need for it. I also see this as a replicable model for education, to make learning real, to make schools like meaningful to the communities that they're embedded in. I think this can happen anywhere in the world. This is a unique sort of circumstance here in Bali and with Green School, but any school in the world, the walls are just way too clearly defined around schools, and it deprives students of essential learning opportunities to grow and be part of communities that they're embedded in. Right?
Are we talking about the less privileged members of communities that would benefit? So where my mind's going is that model that you've created within that school is transferable to another part of the world. Yeah. So in my mind, in Australia, it goes to, well, we have we want to integrate and improve the academic outcomes of our indigenous populations.
Right. So I think this is immediately where our Western mindsets take us. How can we set something up so that we can help and share the good things that we have with people who don't have those good things? But what I found with Kul Kul Connection is, for me, it's been a very slow awakening to realizing that the real wealth is outside of Green School, and we're the ones that need the help. So, sorry, but so when I talk about applications outside, I think the kids that need the help are the ones that are in the school a lot of times. I mean, I myself feel like I'm still recovering from my education. I hate to look at it that way. I'm sure my education gave me a lot of great things, but I really had to train myself to figure out where I fit in. Why is it so difficult to figure that out? That education separates us from the communities that we live in, and we're meant to spend our days in schools where we're not allowed outside, and the people that live all around us aren't allowed in either. It's like, why can't it be really a wall-less learning environment that Green School talks about in any school anywhere? And that was the inspiration for Green School as well, that Alan Wagstaff wrote in that document 3 Springs that talks about this utopic learning environment with the school at the center. It's like a village. Anyway, I just feel that schools could be more like that.
And it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah, exactly.
And it kind of really goes back to that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like what you said about we keep thinking that, we've got to help and give them, but maybe they don't want the help. That
yeah, exactly.
And that's very egotistical to think that in a way, isn't it?
It really is. It's we have to. I keep on knocking myself on the head that way. Yeah. It's really not about that. All the great things we have to bring to them so that they can be more like us. It's actually not that way.
It's not.
No.
I mean, and you just have to look at the data around the societal problems that our cultures are having. Yeah. Escalated levels of domestic violence and mental illness, and I'm not saying it's immune. Bali's immune to that, or other countries, but it definitely feels like it's elevated in our cultures. Yeah,
and as well, just having intact communities. That's just how human beings function best.
I don't even talk to my neighbour back home.
Exactly. Yeah, this is where the real wealth of a place like Bali is. Just families and communities they're real. They're intact. They're practiced every day, and that's where I really have been very humbled in my experience living here.
You seem humble. I know it sounds weird.
I only seem that way.
I wonder what goes on behind closed doors. It's all like, you probably, I don't know, do you have pictures of yourself up around the house?
Yes, in every room.
You've taken them down as soon as I got here.
I did.
But I do. I see it. I don't. I mean, we've all got ego, but yeah, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about ego lately. Actually, that's another thing. But
me too.
Yeah. Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so destructive, man.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've battled it my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's very fear-based.
Yeah.
Because I just want to protect myself from harm.
Yeah.
When I'm not talking physical harm, I'm talking I guess emotional harm. Yeah. Ridicule, judgment. Yeah. And the ego tries to protect you from that, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's effectively what is perpetuating all crises on planet Earth is ego.
It's
the
true,
sense of the separate self, and that we're somehow different and need to protect ourselves from what we're ultimately a part of, and that's just one whole thing.
Dude, that's so profound.
I have no idea what that just meant.
You're like a guru, man. Like, dude, you just woke up like, I don't know where that came from. It's like a Buddha. Like, you're like a modern day Buddha. Is that okay if I call you that? You're not offended by that?
No, I'm okay with that.
Now, listen, it's been epic. It's been an hour and 15 minutes, Tim.
Oh my goodness!
It's just, I'm really comfortable on this nice lounge. It's actually one of the more comfortable settings I've actually done a podcast in. I did one in a swimming pool.
Oh,
episode 25 with Ty Graham, pro surfer, entrepreneur, owner of the Lawn in Canggu. And he's like, yeah, let's do it in my pool. And I remember got about 30 minutes in and my back was killing me. My feet were pruny.
Gross.
And I was just like trying to like act interested. No, I was interested. Ty. He had amazing stories about all sorts of stuff. Yeah. I guess what I almost want to end on what you just said. But it was really cool. But like, what's next for you? Like, are you, do you have an end game?
I think I want to get out of green school in an official capacity, and I just want to spend more time with the farmers. I want to not as a means of earning my living, but more as a means of fulfilling the goals of the project of working with them and being out there.
Even if that meant living off a local salary?
Yeah, exactly.
So you would take a proper pay cut?
Yeah. I think that would feel right. Mm-hmm.
And you'd be comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Do you feel any trepidation at the thought? At me raising that question, do any feelings of fear or trepidation arise?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's rad, man.
Thanks, dude.
It's
well,
so
I haven't
good.
done it yet, so, but I feel like the time is ripe for us to start thinking a lot more about where our food comes from, and I think a lot more people are going to be thinking about that in years coming, and maybe participating in this. So it feels like a good thing to do.
I agree, bro. I agree, because I often have these thoughts. I've never actually verbalized them, and I'll go on record and say it. I feel very busy in my life. I feel like I've been busy for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've always worked.
Yeah.
Since I had my first job was at 14 or younger.
Yeah.
I've always worked or studied and worked and studied, and then now have a family where that's busy at home and at work. And I often think I'd like to just be busy growing my own food.
Yes.
And just surviving day to day. And it's funny because I guess if you spoke to someone who is in that position, they would laugh and go,
no,
I would love to have your air conditioned villa with the swimming pool and the maid.
Yeah.
And is it just this whole human condition of just never being happy and satisfied? I don't know. But I have that thought all the time.
Yeah. Well, me too.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start to listen to those thoughts.
Maybe, man.
Come out and farm with me, Shannon.
Okay, I'm ready. I did a permaculture design course once. Yeah. Again, it's because I think I was drawn to it because it really tapped into that inner feeling of I just want to be connected to the food I eat, but also it was born from I made a decision about 7 years ago to completely remove a few things from my life that weren't serving me, such as alcohol. And then it just put me on this health journey of eating nutritious organic food, and I started learning about nutrient densities in fruit and vegetables and how they can vary given the shelf life and how they're grown and the soil quality and stuff like that. And then it turned into me listening to podcasts about that, and then I heard the concept permaculture, and then I followed what's permaculture, and then really coincidentally I was at a professional development day for a PE professional development day. and there was a workshop called permaculture. And I went to it, and it was me and one other person who signed up for it, and this permaculture guru who was so passionate and just showed me this, what they called a living classroom at this school that was built on toxic sludge from the local steelworks. And they started, and he showed me all these, and they're growing these amazing vegetables on what was toxic sludge, but then they built no-dig vegetable gardens and built the soil on top, and were gradually building soil quality on the most toxic shit you can imagine. And they were relaying stories about sometimes they'd plant a tree, it'd grow, but then the root would tap into a barrel of nuclear waste or something like that, and the tree would just die. So that was some of the challenges they had. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent. But going back to that, and that was where that journey started, and permaculture, and then I ended up, getting into it at my school that I worked at, and I got a grant, and I was able to build a living classroom at this school, and have a program where the kids basically were learning about permaculture full time as their studies, and it was just, and then I got a job at the green school,
Wow. Yeah.
And here I am talking to you.
Yeah.
That's a really condensed version, but it all came back to that desire to be more connected to my environment.
Yeah.
And it still sits there.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So that's why I think I'm actually drawn to you as someone I want to talk to.
Oh, thanks,
yeah,
Shan.
man. And I mean that. And I really want to just thank you so much for, giving me your time and being so open and honest about, your life. And I know it's not easy, yeah?
It's getting easier. If we went another 3 hours, I'd probably start to get really comfortable with this.
Well, the stats show, Tim, that the longer a podcast is, the more listens it gets.
Really?
Well, because apparently it becomes like an audio book, and they'll listen to half hour on their commute to work, and then they'll listen to half hour on the way back, and then they're starting to know the person.
Right.
I'm like, I know this guy. I've listened to him now for an hour.
Interesting.
Let's see what he says the next hour, and then you'll say something. Go, that's such a Tim thing to say. I know him now. That's what it's about. I've done my research, bro.
Oh, that's amazing.
I don't sleep much. I'm a non-sleeper, so I utilize the time. I function on 4 hours sleep a night.
Wow, really?
I don't know why.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a good thing, but I used to fight it and go,
yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm okay. I don't sleep, and then I'm okay with it, and so then I like to research and read in the early hours, and it's not all. I'm actually sleeping longer lately, but anyway, I'm going on a rant, dude. All right, well, man, anything else you want to say?
No, I think you covered it.
High five, brother.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks for being on, man. Episode 30. That's a big one.